Captain Tae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon his eyes fixed on the large screen before him. The strange signal they had detected was unlike anything in human records. It pulsed with a pattern too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. "What do you think, Captain?" asked Jin, the ship's science officer. Her face showed both worry and excitement. Tae-ho ran a hand through his short black hair. They were far beyond the outer colonies. No human ship had ever ventured this deep into uncharted space. "Protocol says we should report back and wait for orders," he said slowly. Then he smiled. "But by the time those orders arrive, whatever is sending that signal might be gone." He made his decision. "Set course for the signal source." Jin nodded and turned to her station. Across the bridge, Jun Park looked up from his security console, his face serious as always. Of all the crew members, Jun was the most unusual. While most security specialists relied on advanced weapons and technology, Jun still practiced ancient martial arts alongside modern combat techniques. Some of the crew made fun of his old-fashioned ways, but Tae-ho respected Jun's dedication. 3 days later, the Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel near an uncharted star system. A blue-green planet orbited the star at just the right distance for life. "The signal is coming from the planet's surface," Jin reported. "And there's more. I'm detecting artificial structures, cities, and ships. Captain, there's a spacecraft heading toward us." Tae-ho felt his heart race. After centuries of searching the stars, humanity had finally found proof of intelligent alien life. "All stations on alert," he ordered calmly, though his pulse pounded in his ears. "Jun, assess threat level but take no aggressive action." "Yes, Captain," Jun replied, his hands moving swiftly over his console. The alien ship grew larger on the screen. It was beautiful, sleek and silver, with curves that seemed impossible for any human engineer to create. "They're hailing us," Jin said, surprise in her voice. "The signal. It's in English." "Put it through," Tae-ho ordered, straightening his uniform. The screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. She looked almost human, but her skin had a faint purple tint, and her eyes were twice as large, completely black, and without visible pupils. Her hair was white and flowed as if in water. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Horizon *", she said, her voice musical and perfect. "I am Commander Hannah of the Nix Confederation. We have been observing your species for some time." Tae-ho felt a chill. They knew the ship's name. They knew English. How long had they been watching Earth? "I am Captain Tae-ho Kim," he replied steadily. "We come in peace on a mission of exploration." Commander Hannah smiled, but something in her expression made Jun step closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing. "We welcome you, Captain," Hannah said. "The Nix are always pleased to meet new species, especially those taking their first steps into the greater galactic community." There was something in her tone, a hint of something that sounded like pity, or perhaps amusement. "We invite you to dock with our vessel so we may meet properly," she continued. "We have much to share with your people." Tae-ho exchanged glances with Jun, who gave a slight nod but remained tense. "We accept your invitation," Tae-ho said. "We look forward to learning about your people." As the communication ended, Jun moved to Tae-ho's side. "Captain," he said quietly, "did you notice how she spoke to us? Like an adult speaking to a child." Tae-ho nodded. "I noticed. Stay alert, Jun. This is a historic moment for humanity, but let's make sure it's remembered for the right reasons." The Horizon * moved toward the Nix ship, beginning humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, a moment that would change the course of human history forever. The Nix homeworld was nothing short of amazing. Tall, crystal buildings reached toward the sky, changing colors with the light. Flying vehicles moved in perfect patterns through the air. Tae-ho, Jun, and 5 other crew members from the Horizon * stood on a viewing platform. taking in the sight. Their technology must be hundreds of years ahead of ours, whispered Mina, the ship's engineer. Her eyes were wide with wonder. Commander Hannah approached with 3 other Nicks. All of them moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. They were taller than humans, with the same purple-tinted skin and large black eyes. "Welcome to Nixia," Hannah said. "We hope you find our home interesting." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's incredible," Tai-Ho said honestly. "We're honored to be the first humans to visit." Hannah nodded. "Yes, your species is quite young in space travel. But we all must start somewhere." One of the Nicks behind her made a sound that might have been a laugh. June noticed it and stood a little straighter. "Come," Hannah said. "We have prepared a demonstration of our abilities." They followed the Nicks to a large open area where many Nicks had gathered to watch. In the center, 2 Nicks stood facing each other. "Physical training is important to our people," Hannah explained. "We believe in strengthening both body and mind." The 2 Nicks began to move. They were incredibly fast, their bodies blurring as they sparred. They jumped higher than any human could, and when one landed a hit, the sound was like metal striking metal. "Impressive," Tai-Ho said. "Very impressive." Hannah smiled again. "Yes, our natural abilities are quite advanced compared to humans. We are 3 times stronger, much faster, and we have this." Suddenly, one of the Nicks fighters stopped in mid-attack. He seemed frozen. The other Nicks hadn't touched him. "Telepathic abilities," Hannah explained. "We can connect with and control each other's minds. It is useful in combat and in everyday life." The demonstration ended, and the crowd of Nicks broke into polite applause. "Now," Hannah said, turning to June, "I understand you practice fighting techniques." June nodded. "I study traditional martial arts from Earth." "How interesting," Hannah said. There was that tone again, like an adult amused by a child's drawing. "Would you show us? It would be educational to see human combat methods." Tai-Ho looked at June, who nodded once. "I would be happy to demonstrate," June said. A space cleared. June stepped forward and began his form. His movements were precise and controlled. He moved through punches, kicks, and blocks with perfect form. Though he lacked the Nex's speed and strength, there was beauty in his movements. When he finished, there was silence. Then Hannah laughed. "That was quaint," she said. "You move well, for a human. But such slow, simple movements would never work against a Nex. Martial arts aren't just about winning fights," June replied calmly. "They're about discipline, control, and understanding your own limits." "Yes, well," Hannah said, clearly not impressed. "I suppose when your species has such limited natural abilities, you must find ways to compensate." June said nothing, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Come," Hannah continued. "Let us show you our science facilities. Your people might find some of our simpler technologies useful." As they walked, Tai-Ho moved closer to June. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," June replied. "But I don't trust them. The way they look at us, it's not as equals." Tai-Ho nodded. "I know, but we need to learn more before we make any judgments. This is still a historic opportunity." "I agree," June said. "Just keep your guard up, Captain." As they entered a large building, neither man noticed the small drone following them, recording every word and movement. Back in a secure room, other Nicks watched the footage, making notes on human weaknesses and discussing how easy it would be to control this new primitive species. The next day, June walked alone through the Nicks capital city. Tai-Ho and the others were in meetings with Nicks scientists, but June had asked to explore. Surprisingly, Hannah had agreed, though she assigned a guide named Da to accompany him. "This building houses our historical records," Da explained, pointing to a tall structure that gleamed like black glass. "May I see inside?" June asked. Da hesitated. "It is not usually open to visitors." "I understand," June said. "I'm just curious about your history." Day seemed to consider this. "Wait here," he said finally. "I will check if it's possible." As soon as Dai walked away, Jun noticed that he had left his access card on a bench. Whether this was a mistake or not, Jun couldn't tell. He picked it up and quickly entered the building. Inside, the walls were lined with strange devices that projected images when touched. Jun moved carefully from display to display. Most showed Nick's achievements: cities built, scientific discoveries, space exploration. Then he found something different. One display showed the Knicks meeting another alien species, tall, four-armed beings with green skin. The images were similar to the humans' arrival. Friendly greetings, cultural exchange, technology sharing. Jun touched the screen to see more. The next images showed the green aliens working for the Knicks, building cities and ships. They looked tired, thin. In later images, they wore collars around their necks. Jun moved faster now. He found records of 6 different alien species. Each story was the same. First contact, cultural exchange. Then slowly the aliens became workers, servants, and eventually slaves to the Knicks. His heart racing, Jun copied as much information as he could onto a small device he carried. As he finished, he heard footsteps. He quickly moved away from the display and pretended to be looking at something else. Day returned with another Knicks. "I'm sorry, but the historical center is closed today," Daz said. "No problem," Jun replied calmly. "Your architecture is interesting enough from the outside." Back at their quarters, Jun showed Taiho what he had found. They'd done this before, Jun explained, displaying the images. They find new species, pretend to be friendly, share some technology, then slowly take control. Taiho's face grew serious as he looked through the evidence. This green species, the Krell, they were free at first, but within 50 years, they were completely under Nick's control. And here, Jun pointed to another image. The blue ones, the Meridae. They tried to fight back when they realized what was happening. The Knicks wiped out half their population before they surrendered. Taiho sat heavily in his chair. "They're planning the same for us." "I believe so," Jun said. "All the talk about cultural exchange and helping humanity. It's just the first step." There was a chime at the door. Hannah entered without waiting for permission. "I hope you've rested well," she said. "We have exciting news." "What's that?" Taiho asked, his voice carefully neutral as he discreetly covered the images. "The High Council is impressed with your species," Hannah said. "We wish to form a closer relationship with humanity." "That's good news," Taiho replied. "Yes," Hannah smiled. "We're organizing a series of friendly competitions between our peoples to celebrate our new alliance." "Competitions?" Jun asked. "Tests of intelligence, technological skill, and physical ability," Hannah explained. "Just for fun, of course. To better understand each other's strengths." Her eyes moved to Jun. "The final event will be a combat demonstration, a friendly match between representatives of both species." "And who will represent the Knicks?" Taiho asked, though he already knew the answer. Hannah's smile widened. "I will, of course. As our finest warrior." She looked directly at Jun. "Perhaps your martial arts expert would like to participate. It would be educational for everyone." After she left, Taiho turned to Jun. "She's planning something." "Yes," Jun agreed. "This isn't about friendly competition. She wants to prove humans are weak. It's part of their pattern." "What should we do?" Jun's face was determined. "We play along for now. Learn more, and prepare for what's coming." The Great Hall of the Knicks was filled with hundreds of aliens and the small group of humans from the Horizon *. Bright lights shone down on a central platform where the competitions would take place. Taiho sat with his crew, watching as the first contests began. "The test of minds," announced a tall Nix with a booming voice. A young Nix stepped forward. Across from him, Jin represented the humans. They sat at a table with a complex puzzle between them. The puzzle had hundreds of moving parts that shifted and changed colors. Jin was smart, one of the best scientists on the Horizon *. She worked quickly, her fingers moving over the puzzle pieces. But the Nyx was faster. His large black eyes seemed to see patterns that Jin couldn't. He finished first, and the Nyx audience cheered. Next came the technology challenge. Mina, the ship's engineer, faced a Nyx expert. They were each given broken machines and asked to fix them. Again, the Nyx won easily. "Don't worry," Taiho said to his crew. "We're here to learn, not to win." But he could see the pattern. The Nyx were showing off their superiority. After each contest, Hana would smile at the human team, her face kind but her eyes cold. "Now the final event," the announcer called. A demonstration of physical skill and combat ability. Hana stood and walked to the center of the platform. She wore a simple outfit that allowed free movement. The crowd of Nyx applauded her. "Who will represent the humans?" the announcer asked. Taiho looked at Jun. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. Jun stood. "Yes, I do. We need to show them something." He walked to the platform and stood facing Hana. The Nyx in the audience whispered to each other. Some laughed. "The rules are simple," the announcer said. "The match ends when one competitor yields or is unable to continue. No weapons are allowed." Hana bowed slightly to Jun. "I will try not to hurt you too badly," she said, just loud enough for him to hear. "Thank you for your concern," Jun replied calmly. From a private box above, 3 Nyx watched with special interest. They were members of the High Council, the leaders of the Nyx. "Is this wise?" one asked. "Showing our strength so openly." "It's necessary," another replied. "The humans must understand their place in our new relationship. After this demonstration, they will accept our protection without question. And if they resist, they won't. No species has ever resisted after seeing the gap between their abilities and ours. Besides, we have taken precautions." He pointed to Nyx guards positioned near the human crew. Back on the platform, Hana and Jun circled each other. Hana moved first, so fast she seemed to blur. Her fist struck Jun's chest, sending him stumbling backward. "First point to Commander Hana," the announcer called. Hana smiled and turned to the crowd, raising her arms. The Nyx cheered loudly. Jun steadied himself and returned to the center. His face showed no emotion. Hana attacked again, this time with a spinning kick that Jun barely dodged. She followed with a series of punches, each just grazing Jun as he moved backward. "She's playing with him," Mina whispered to Taiho. "Like a cat with a mouse." Taiho nodded grimly. "That's exactly what this is, a show to demonstrate how weak we are." In the center, Hana landed another powerful blow. Jun fell to one knee. "Perhaps you wish to yield?" Hana asked loudly. "There is no shame in accepting natural superiority." The crowd laughed. Even some of the High Council members smiled. Jun stood slowly. There was a small cut on his face, but his eyes were clear and focused. "The match has just begun," he said quietly. Hana's smile faltered slightly. She had expected him to give up by now. She glanced at the High Council members, then back at Jun. "Very well," she said. "Let us continue. I admire your spirit, if not your wisdom." She moved forward again, but this time with less showmanship and more purpose. The Nyx gave the humans 1 day to prepare for the continuation of the combat demonstration. Jun sat in the medical room of their quarters as Jin treated his injuries. 2 bruised ribs, multiple contusions, and a slight concussion, Jin said, running a small device over his chest. She was holding back, and she still did this much damage. Jun nodded. She wanted to make a point, not end the fight too quickly. Taiho entered the room, his face worried. "How is he?" "I'll be ready tomorrow," Jun answered before Jin could speak. "That's not what I asked," Taiho said, sitting across from him. "Jun, You don't have to continue this fight. We can find another way. June shook his head. No, this is our chance. I've been watching her, studying how she moves. And? Taiho asked. She's incredibly strong and fast, but she relies too much on her advantages. June winced as Jin applied medicine to a cut on his arm. And she depends on her telepathic abilities to predict my moves. Mina, who had been quietly working on a small device in the corner, looked up. I've been analyzing the Nyx physiology from the data we've collected. They have a few weaknesses. She brought over a small screen showing diagrams of Nyx anatomy. Their joints are similar to ours but more flexible. However, this means they're slightly less stable when pressure is applied at certain angles. June studied the diagrams carefully. And their telepathy. It seems to work by reading electrical signals from the brain before they become physical actions, Minna explained. That's how they predict movements. But if you don't think about what you're going to do before you do it, they can't read it, June finished. Taiho looked skeptical. How can you move without thinking about it first? Muscle memory, Jun said. Years of training until actions become instinct. He stood up, moving into a fighting stance despite his injuries. In traditional martial arts, we train to clear the mind, to act without thought. It's called mushin, the mind of no mind. Meanwhile, in another part of the Nyx complex, Hana was meeting with the High Council. The human is resilient, one council member said. More than we expected. It changes nothing, Hana replied. Today I was simply demonstrating our superiority for the audience. Tomorrow I will end it quickly. The oldest council member leaned forward. Be careful, Commander. There is something unusual about this human. His mind is difficult to read. Hana laughed. His mind doesn't matter. No amount of training can overcome the natural gap between our species. Perhaps, the elder said. But remember, it is not only about winning the fight. It is about securing humanity's cooperation. After tomorrow, they will understand their place, Hana said confidently. Once their champion is defeated, we will present our offer of protection. They will accept out of necessity, as all others have. Back in the human quarters, Jun was practicing movements slowly, focusing on his breathing despite the pain in his ribs. I intercepted a communication, Minna said, entering the room. After the demonstration tomorrow, the Nyx plan to demand Earth accept their protection. It's exactly what they did to the other species before taking control. Taiho's face hardened. Then tomorrow's match is more important than we thought. It's not just about pride. It's about showing that humans won't be easily dominated. Jun stopped his practice and looked at his captain. I understand. Can you win? Taiho asked directly. I don't know, Jun answered honestly, but I can show them something they don't expect. He resumed his slow, careful movements. Humans have been fighting stronger opponents throughout our history. We've learned a few things along the way. As night fell on the Nyx world, both Jun and Hana prepared in their own ways. Hana trained at full speed, her movements a blur of power and aggression. Jun moved slowly, deliberately, focusing on efficiency and balance. Two warriors from different worlds, each certain of their path. Only tomorrow would reveal whose approach would prevail. The Great Hall was even more crowded than before. Word had spread about the human who had survived the first round against Commander Hana. Now thousands of Nyx filled the seats, eager to see the conclusion. Taiho and his crew entered to a quiet murmur from the crowd. They took their seats in the special section reserved for them. Taiho noticed there were more Nyx guards than yesterday. Nervous? Jin asked quietly. For Jun? Yes, Taiho admitted. For humanity? Definitely. The lights dimmed, and spotlights focused on the central platform. The announcer's voice boomed through the hall. Welcome to the final day of our cultural exchange competitions. Today, we conclude the combat demonstration between Commander Hana of the Nyx Confederation and Jun Park of Earth. The crowd erupted in cheers as Hana entered. She wore the same simple outfit as before, but now with symbols of rank on her shoulders. She moved with perfect confidence, smiling and waving to the crowd. When June entered, there were no cheers, but there was curiosity. Many Knicks leaned forward in their seats. Here was the human who had refused to yield despite being clearly outmatched. June looked different today. His movements were calm and measured. The cuts on his face had been treated, but bruises were still visible. He bowed slightly to the crowd, then to Hana. In the High Council's private box, the leaders watched with interest. "The human appears injured," one observed. "Of course," another replied. "But he still stands. Interesting." Hana and Jun faced each other in the center of the platform. The announcer spoke again. "The same rules apply. The match ends when one competitor yields or is unable to continue. Begin." Hana didn't waste time with showmanship now. She attacked immediately, moving with blinding speed. But this time, something was different. June moved too, not backward in defense, but slightly to the side. Hana's strike missed by inches. She quickly adjusted and attacked again. June shifted, his movements minimal but effective. Again, Hana missed. The crowd grew quiet. "What is he doing?" Minna whispered. "Conserving energy," Taiho replied. "And making her work." Hana attacked a third time, now with a complex combination of strikes. June blocked the first two and dodged the third. The crowd gasped when his hand briefly touched Hana's arm, deflecting her power rather than opposing it directly. Hana stepped back, her smile gone. "Interesting adjustment, human, but it won't save you." She moved forward again, this time more carefully. She feinted left, then struck right. June seemed to fall for the trick, but at the last moment, he dropped lower than expected. Hana's strike passed over his head, and for a moment, she was off balance. In that brief moment, June acted. His fist struck her side, not with great power, but precisely on a pressure point Minna had identified. Hana's breath caught, and she stumbled slightly. The hall fell completely silent. Hana turned, her face showing surprise and the first hint of anger. "A lucky strike," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thank you," Jun replied simply, returning to his ready stance. In the High Council box, the elder leaned forward. "The human hit her." "A minor touch," another dismissed. Hana was careless. "Look at her face," the elder pointed out. "She is surprised. She cannot read his intentions." On the platform, Hana attacked with new intensity. Her movements were still incredibly fast, but now they carried real power behind them. She was no longer putting on a show. She was trying to end the fight. Jun continued his strategy of minimal movement and redirection. He took some hits, wincing as they landed on his already injured ribs, but he remained standing. And twice more, he managed to land light strikes of his own. The crowd of Knicks began to murmur. This was not the quick, decisive victory they had expected. Hana stepped back, breathing harder now. Her perfect composure had cracked slightly. She looked at Jun with new eyes, reassessing the human warrior she had laughed at just yesterday. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "I underestimated you." Jun didn't reply. He simply waited, his breathing controlled despite his injuries, his eyes never leaving hers. Hana attacked again, her movements now precise and deadly. Gone was the playful demonstration of the previous day. The next commander was fighting with purpose. Jun continued his strategy, moving only as much as necessary. He didn't try to match her speed or strength. Instead, he watched her patterns and rhythms. "He's studying her," Taiho said quietly to his crew, "learning how she fights." Hana landed a powerful kick that sent Jun sliding across the platform. The crowd cheered, expecting this to be the beginning of the end. Jun rose slowly, one hand holding his side where the kick had connected. "You should yield," Hana called out. "You've shown enough courage for your species." Jun took a deep breath and settled back into his stance. "Thank you for your concern," he replied calmly. Something in his tone made Hana pause. The human didn't sound defeated. He sounded focused. She charged forward, launching a flurry of strikes designed to overwhelm any defense. Jum's hands moved in tight, efficient circles, deflecting rather than blocking. One of Hana's punches missed its target and left her slightly extended. In that brief moment, Jum stepped forward and struck 3 rapid blows, to her shoulder, her ribs, and her knee. The crowd gasped. Hana stumbled back, genuine surprise on her face. In the High Council box, the elder leaned forward. "Did you see that? The human is using our own momentum against us." "Impossible." Another council member objected. "Our advantages are built into our biology." "Watch," the elder said simply. On the platform, Hana circled Jun more cautiously now. "How are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "I cannot sense your next move." "I'm not thinking about my next move," Jun replied. "I'm just responding." Hana's eyes narrowed. She reached out with her mind, trying to read his intentions, but found nothing but calm awareness. No plans, no strategies, just presence in the moment. Frustrated, she attacked again. This time, Jun didn't just defend. As Hana's punch came toward his face, he stepped inside her guard, redirected her arm, and used her own strength and momentum to throw her over his hip. The Nyx commander, who had never been thrown before, hit the platform with a loud thud. The entire hall fell silent in shock. For a moment, Hana lay there, stunned. Then she flipped quickly to her feet, her face showing a mix of confusion and growing anger. "What fighting style is this?" she demanded. "Judo," Jun answered. "It means the gentle way. It's about using your opponent's strength against them." In the audience, Nyx turned to each other, whispering in confusion and surprise. This wasn't how the demonstration was supposed to go. The human was supposed to be easily defeated. Hana's next attack was fueled by anger. She moved with incredible speed and power, but her movements were becoming less controlled, more predictable. Jun continued to redirect and counter when openings appeared. "He's getting to her," Jin whispered. "She's losing her composure." Taiho nodded. "That's his real strategy. Not to beat her with strength, but to show her that strength alone isn't enough." On the platform, both fighters were breathing hard now. Jun was clearly in pain from his injuries, but Hana was showing signs of fatigue as well. Her perfect technique was slipping. "You can't win," she said between breaths. "Eventually you'll make a mistake." "Probably," Jun agreed. "But winning isn't always the point." "Then what is?" "Learning," Jun said. "Growing. Understanding your limitations so you can overcome them." Hana frowned, then charged forward again. This time her attack was wild, powerful but unbalanced. Jun sidestepped, caught her arm, and used her momentum to send her tumbling across the platform. As she rose, there was no laughter now, no superior smile. Her eyes showed something new, respect mixed with frustration. In the High Council box, the elder nodded slowly. "Now we see the true strength of these humans, not in their bodies, but in their adaptability. They've spent their entire history fighting stronger opponents, including themselves." "What do you mean?" another council member asked. "Their planet has thousands of different fighting styles, each designed to overcome superior strength. They've been preparing for this moment for their entire history, without even knowing it." Hana stood at the center of the platform, her breathing heavy, her perfect composure gone. Across from her, Jun was clearly tired and hurt, but his eyes remained focused and calm. The crowd of Nyx watched in stunned silence. This was not what they had expected to see. The human should have been defeated long ago. "Enough playing," Hana said, her voice hard. "I will end this now." She closed her eyes for a moment, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. When her eyes opened again, they glowed with a faint purple light. "She's channeling her full telepathic abilities," one of the High Council members explained to the others. "No human mind can withstand this." Hana moved forward, faster than before, her strikes guided by her enhanced perception. But something strange happened. Instead of trying to anticipate her moves, Jun closed his eyes. What is he doing? Minna asked, leaning forward in her seat. Fighting with his other senses, Taeho replied. If he can't see her movements, he can't try to predict them. And if he doesn't try to predict them, she can't read his mind. Jin finished. On the platform, Hana's strikes met only air as Jun moved like water, flowing around her attacks. His eyes remained closed, but his body responded to the sounds of her movement, the feel of the air as she displaced it, the vibrations through the platform. The next crowd began to murmur in confusion. How could the human avoid her attacks without seeing them? Frustrated, Hana launched a powerful kick aimed at Jun's head. It was faster than any human should be able to dodge. But Jun bent backward, the kick passing over him by inches. As he straightened, his eyes finally opened, and in one smooth motion, he grabbed Hana's leg before she could retract it and twist it. The next commander, caught off balance, fell hard to the platform floor. The impact echoed through the silent hall. Hana quickly rolled to her feet, but her face now showed something new: doubt. For the first time, she considered the possibility that she might not win this fight. The realization hit her like a physical blow. How? She demanded. How are you doing this? We are stronger, faster, more advanced in every way. Jun's voice was quiet but carried across the platform. Physical strength isn't everything. Humans have been fighting stronger opponents since we first picked up stones as weapons. We've had to be clever, to find ways to overcome natural disadvantages. He moved into a ready stance again. Our martial arts weren't developed by the strongest humans. They were created by those who needed to defend against the strong. They're built on thousands of years of experience, refined through countless battles. Hana attacked again, but her movements had lost their confidence. Jun slipped inside her guard and used her own momentum to throw her again. This time, when she rose, there was a new look in her eyes. Respect. In the High Council box, the elder nodded slowly. Now she understands, he said. The human fighting traditions aren't primitive. They're sophisticated responses to survival challenges we never faced. What do you mean? Another council member asked. Our species evolved to be dominant on our world, the elder explained. We never needed to develop ways to fight stronger opponents because we were always the strongest. But humans, he gestured to Jun. Their planet is filled with creatures stronger than them, and their own history is filled with conflict against each other. They've been preparing for this moment for their entire existence. On the platform, Hana stood straighter, her arrogance gone. I see now, she said. I underestimated not just you, but your entire species. Your weakness forced you to become stronger in other ways. Jun nodded. Not just in fighting. In everything. Humans adapt. It's what we do best. Hana looked at Jun with new eyes, seeing not a primitive being from a less advanced world, but a warrior shaped by challenges she had never faced, carrying the wisdom of thousands of years of human struggle. The laughter was gone now, replaced by understanding. She had made a grave mistake in dismissing human capabilities, and judging by the silence in the great hall, the rest of the necks were beginning to realize it too. The final moments of the match changed everything. Hana, now fighting with respect rather than mockery, still had her physical advantages. But Jun had something else, centuries of human wisdom about overcoming stronger opponents. They circled each other, both tired but determined. The entire hall watched in silence. Even the High Council members leaned forward in their seats. Hana attacked with a perfect combination of strikes. Jun blocked the first, dodged the second, but the third caught him in his injured ribs. Pain flashed across his face, but he didn't fall. Instead, he stepped inside Hana's guard. Using a technique perfected by humans fighting stronger humans, he swept her legs and followed her to the ground. In seconds, he had her arm locked in a position where strength didn't matter. To move would mean a broken arm. The hall was completely silent. I yield, Hana said clearly. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jun released her arm, and stepped back. He bowed slightly, showing respect to his opponent. The Nix were stunned. Many had never seen Commander Hannah defeated in combat. Yet a human, a being they considered primitive, had done it. Hannah stood and faced June. Then, to everyone's surprise, she bowed in return. "The match is concluded," the announcer finally said, his voice uncertain. "The human, June Park, is victorious." In the High Council box, the members spoke quietly but urgently. "This changes our approach," the elder said. "We cannot treat humans as we have treated other species. But our technology is still superior," another argued. "For now," the elder replied. "But how long would that last? A species that can adapt so quickly, that can overcome natural disadvantages through ingenuity, they would soon catch up. And then what?" On the platform, Hannah approached June and Taiho. "You fought well," she said to June. "I was wrong about you. About humans." "Thank you," June replied simply. "Our original plan," Hannah admitted, "was to offer Earth our protection after demonstrating our superiority. It is how we have integrated other species into our confederation." "You mean conquered them?" Taiho said. Hannah nodded. "Yes, we believed it was the natural order of things. The strong lead, the weak follow." She looked at June. "But today I learned that strength comes in many forms." Later that day, the human crew met with the High Council. The atmosphere was very different from previous meetings. "We wish to propose a true alliance," the elder said. "Not domination, but partnership. Our peoples have different strengths. Together, we could accomplish much." Taiho looked at June, who nodded slightly. "We are interested in friendship between our species," Taiho said, "but we would need to ensure Earth's independence is respected." "Of course," the elder agreed. "We have much to learn from each other." As the meeting ended, Hannah approached June. "I would like to learn more about your martial arts," she said. "There is wisdom there that we Nix have never needed to develop." "I would be happy to teach you," June replied, "and to learn from you as well." Hannah hesitated, then asked, "Would it be possible for me to visit your Earth? As an ambassador, I believe I could help our peoples understand each other." Taiho smiled. "I think that could be arranged." 2 days later, the Horizon prepared to depart. Hannah stood with them at the docking bay, a small bag of belongings with her. "Are you sure about this?" another Nix commander asked her quietly. "Going to their world?" "Yes," Hannah replied. "I laughed at humans once, certain they were inferior. Now I know better. There is much they can teach us about adaptation, about finding strength in apparent weakness." She looked at June, who was helping prepare the ship. "And I have much to learn." As the Horizon lifted off, carrying the first Nix ambassador to Earth, Taiho looked at his crew. "Well, this isn't how I expected first contact to go," he said with a smile. "It's better," June replied. "Instead of finding a master or an enemy, we found a partner. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all." The ship accelerated away from the Nix homeworld, carrying with it the beginning of a new relationship between species, one based on mutual respect and the recognition that true strength comes in many forms.